welcome to the Old and in the Way comedy podcast with Bob and Mark, where we fight ageism one bad joke at a time. Reluctantly, we had to learn the hard way that denial and repression oftentimes are not enough to hold back the tides of reality before we get our tickets punched. So our mission is clear and compelling. We will pull the veil back on aging, reveal much of what's real and absurd with growing old. We're politically incorrect. We're generationally conflicted. And we are Bob and Mark, Old and in the Way. Ladies and gentlemen, our first guest tonight is Monterey Morrissey, and Bob will begin the show.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks so much for joining us. I know you two have in your mutual background the Trident in the late 60s, early 70s. I'd like to start by getting you to comment on your memories of the Trident. It seems to me, in retrospect, to be kind of a magic moment in time of scantily clad women and rock stars and Robin Williams. Is it as glorious as it seems to be in retrospect?
Well, Robin was, that's for sure. I had met him there as a trainee to be a dishwasher, and he spent one afternoon doing that, and he said, "No way, I got to be on the floor with the people." And so the next day he trained as a busboy, and off he went because he needed to be on stage. He really did. And I ran into him on and off after the Trident and through the years, and he just kept blossoming. But you saw the fire in him when he was a kid when he came to the Trident. I mean, he literally was a kid, playing tennis with his mom and going crazy.
Then that makes us kids, because Robin would be 72 as you and I are.
That's right. Those were wild and crazy days, no doubt about it. I mean, the Trident was a circus, and one of my favorite memories was there was a woman that waitress there with the biggest natural you ever saw, and they always wore these great long flowing dresses, and her husband, who was from Gate 5, and he was one of the Redlegs down there, a crazy group of guys and gals. And he had this old turn of the century, meaning 18 to 1900s, steam driven tugboat. And he would come by in the late afternoon to pick her up after her shift. And if it was a nice day, she would punch out and then walk through the restaurant, out of the kitchen, through the restaurant, out onto the packed deck in the afternoon sun. And he would come up alongside and make the turn. And she would, more often than not, just dive into the bay. And then she'd climb on the back of the tug, and of course that natural now was just this long flowing braid that went down the back of her. It was just amazing, and the shock of the tourists that were eating on the deck was that was half the fun. It was.
I can imagine. Mark, do you want to join in with some Trident reminiscence?
Well, there's so many of them, but
yeah.
Monterey, did you know Eric Shigar, who hung out with Robin? They both went to College of Marin and trained under Jim Dunn at College of Marin Acting.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Eric and Robin were the same size. They were both hairy. They were both acting out all the time. And what they would do on hot days was, like this woman, they would walk through the restaurant, climb up onto the deck, and swim out into the bay and just go swimming.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of the restaurant up the street at the time, but there were steps out of the water there, and they would eventually swim over there. And at one point, Eric and Robin were doing something fairly complicated. They were swimming underneath the Golden Gate Bridge where
Hmm.
there are multiple currents. And I think what a lot of people didn't realize about Robin was how athletic he was.
Yes.
One day I was riding my 10 speed up to the top of Mount Tam, and he comes running down it. And when we worked as busboys, it was incredibly demanding physically. And where he shined was he more than carried his weight. He was an
Hmm.
excellent person to work with.
Yes, he was.
So in terms again of the Trident, Monterey, you were in Woody Allen's Play It Again, Sam, that was shot at the Trident. Did you get your SAG card out of that?
Not at that time. No, it took many more years before that finally happened. That happened later in life. And there was a lot in between the Trident and when I got my SAG card. And it was probably another 40 years between there. But it was an amazing time there. And it was amazing time getting my SAG card too, because between then I had pretty much taken care of traveling the Canadian area and across the country and down to Central America and all through Mexico and the West Indies and all through all 13 countries in South America before that's where I went right after I left the Trident. So I was still a wild and crazy kid, but I had to shave everything off. Just before I left, I shaved it all off to get my passport picture. And I went into the kitchen and Pierre looks at me and he does a double take. And then he recognized my eyes and my voice and he was lousy groovy. You can't work here like that. And
Pierre was this incredible chef in the kitchen who produced
yes.
incredible food, but he was very demanding. You could not screw up. You literally, he expected perfection all the time. And what it made him interesting was I understand every year he went to Madison Square Garden to judge these martial arts events. And
Hmm.
he himself, unbeknownst to many of the people at the Trident, was so physically adept and competent. One day I saw him jump up on a counter without touching anything else, and the counter was 3.5 to 4 feet above the floor. And I'm looking at this guy who I thought was in his 50s or 60s and going, how did he even do that? But he was very demanding
Hmm.
and he ran a strict kitchen and it worked.
It did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uh, to get a little bit back to Play It Again, Sam,
Oh,
as
yeah.
not having been in the union at that point, I understand Woody used real employees in the movie, not just actors.
Exactly. Monday at the Trident was kind of the housekeeping day. That's when things were a deep cleaning in the kitchen and throughout the restaurant and the bar and the espresso bar and all that. And also they put out the schedules and I was trying to remember the head waitress's name, but I keep forgetting it. But so it was one of those days. I didn't know what was going on. I walked in and there were a lot of trucks that weren't normal produce trucks on the pier there. And they were unloading equipment and filling it up. And I came in the back and I said, well, what the heck's going on? And they tell us, well, there's a movie going on today and whatnot. And as they were setting up, they were putting in orders because the whole restaurant had to be set up like it was open. So before all the people, the extras came in and whatnot, and all the background, we had to prepare all the food for the tables, get that out there, get the table set, and they were using everybody, all the employees in the kitchen that day to take care of that. So it was a surprise to us. We had to stay a little later to catch up with what we normally would do that day because we were taking care of them. But yeah, a few of us got our turns to walk out there and walk through the filming, which I was fortunate enough to be able to do. And I got a real healthy little check out of, I think it was Warner Brothers. And that was a great surprise for
Healthy.
me.
How healthy? This is 1970 or something?
It was 1970 and I got $700 for that.
Wow.
Yeah, that was well over a month's pay.
That's a lot of money back then.
Oh yeah. What do you think I went to South America for?
You went to the Fillmore for like 2 months.
Oh, easily. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the Fillmore, I had a whole shtick about how I got into there too, because, it used to be at some of those places like the Fillmore or the Family Dog or something like that. Um, we'd have a guitar case and hang around the back and then just walk in when a group was walking in holding equipment. And that got us pretty well.
Oh, what a great con that was. Boy.
Yeah,
It
you should have
would.
gone into politics.
Yeah, I should have, behind my time here, or ahead of my time.
Monterey. What celebrities do you remember coming through?
Um, well, of course, Bill Cosby was big
And
because
I had a run-in with him, but that's another story.
yeah. Cosby, I remember the role of Cash. He always, he was the one person you always hear about people carrying a role. Well, he really had a roll of money. And he would peel that. He loved peeling off money to people. And, he took care of the girls very well. And financially. And I was fortunate enough as I worked my way up before I left. I was working the espresso and juice bar. And so he would hang out rather up in that little corner where that was. It was a
The
great
90s by the fireplace.
yeah, and just hang out and hold court. And it was a wonderful time to be there, and then well, with the espresso bar, that's a nice level up there too, because you can kind of look over everything. And the other guys that came in is we had a lot of rock stars that went through there.
Name some.
And oh well, there was Crosby, Stills, and Nash would come in. Tommy Smothers was in there. Of course, I saw him more on his sailboat, and he loved Matus. Remember that funny little round bottle that Matus came in? I haven't seen that stuff in years, but um, the Smothers brothers and oh gosh, was Guido Sarducci around at that time?
Don Novella.
Yeah,
He lived
yeah.
in San Anselmo.
Right.
We were both dating the same woman at one time.
Oh,
And
that's
I was
another
more
story.
interested in meeting him.
Yeah, right. But there was a lot of competition then, I'll tell you. And there was, anybody playing in the not only in the music area, but if they were sober enough, they'd make it across the bridge. There was that would be playing like the Purple Onion or something like that. And because Jonathan Winters came through once, and I remember him well because there was a famous story about him at the Balclutha in San Francisco.
Sure.
And my grandfather was a big Norwegian guy. Um, he retired and got the job as a night watchman on the Balclutha. And he was the guy that went up the rat lines and clocked him and put him over his shoulder and brought him back down because
Wow. Because
that's
he's a big guy.
he's a very big guy. But my grandpa, who started out at 13, who went to sea in Norway on a whaler as a cabin boy, and once he hit San Francisco, he went finally to the Alaskan Packers. And once he hit San Francisco, he jumped off and never went back to sea. So he was still a big man, though, and big enough to go up there and throw Jonathan Winters over his shoulder. But it was a great place. I mean, if anybody was in town, they went to the Trident.
Were you there when the Hells Angels had their encounter with a couple of San Francisco 49ers?
No, but I sure heard about that one. I was probably the craziest day I was there was the day the Spike Africa, who had one of the last working whalers on the West Coast. Still had the harpoon on the bow. It was an old Navy minesweeper, and they were moored off of the Trident for a while, and that's when the Trident got robbed, and they had pointed the finger at the guys on that boat. And they said, it was probably them. They're always looking at us and whatnot. And they're right there. And they were so upset about that. That was also the time of the longshoremen strike in Hawaii. And Hawaii was out of toilet paper completely. And all the hotels were going crazy. They were going to sell anybody that could get over there with a roll of toilet paper, they'd pay $1 a roll. So they filled every nook and cranny of that ship up with toilet paper, and they were about to leave for Hawaii. And so their goodbye to the Trident was they headed out towards Angel Island, came about, and steamed towards the Trident on a beautiful, no wind, glassy bay weekend afternoon, probably about 4:30 or so. I could just feel what the deck was like on those days. And, people started to notice that this ship or this was coming straight at them, and they blow on the horn a couple of times, and he throws it into reverse and fires the cannon, which was loaded with toilet paper. And it came right at the Trident, went over the top and landed in the bridgeway. But as it was doing, it was streaming toilet paper. And everybody was shocked. And he, as he threw it in reverse, he also hit the wheel, hit the other prop forward, spun around, and head out the gate to Hawaii, never to be seen again because he sold the boat over there. But that was pretty thrilling. That was pretty.
Toilet papered from the bay.
That's right. Yeah, out of a cannon. Yes, shot from guns.
Guys, speaking of music stars, I always associate the Trident ownership or with
the Kingston Trio. Right.
Were the Kingston Trio around?
I never saw them. I don't know that I don't recall hearing of them being there while I was there, but it was well known at that time still, because they were still in everybody's memory. But
always good meeting a fellow Trident alumni.
Absolutely. You must have come on just as I was heading out to South America.
I showed up on a Saturday night when it was like 90 degrees out, one of those hot September days.
Love it.
And I got introduced to Robin, who trained me as a busboy. We worked together there for 2.5 years.
Great.
And they closed the Trident in '76. And then Robin and I spent the next 2 days. We started at Sally Stanford's, went all the way downtown, knocking on every restaurant's door to see if we could get hired.
Yeah.
We eventually got hired at the Sausalito Food Company, but that was 2 days of knocking on doors.
Yeah.
And literally walking the streets. And then one night I'm watching the Richard Pryor Variety Hour on NBC, and they introduced their new writer, and it's Robin. And I'm going, but he's on floor tomorrow. And when he didn't show up, nobody was surprised.
Well, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
From there he went.
Yep.
Okay, guys.
All righty.
And we'll do part 2.
All right. Thank you so much,
Bob. Thank you, Monterey.
You'll be hearing from me soon.
Great. Look forward to it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.